Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Jean Metzger. I'm the Vice President of Membership Marketing and Communications for ACCP, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's or this afternoon's CSR Marketplace Virtual 2023 program. For this session in particular, we're going to be talking about next level skills-based volunteering, and our host is Catchafire. Before we get started with today's session, I do want to remind you that this is one of several sessions we are hosting this week. On the slide is this week's agenda, and we do encourage you to register for the upcoming programs on our website. For those of you who may be new to ACCP, we are the premier membership organization working to increase the effectiveness of corporate social impact professionals. We connect our members with the people, the resources, and the knowledge that they need to enhance their impact in their companies and in their communities. I also would like to point out a few upcoming ACCP events. So our next webcast at the end of this month is on September 28th. Social investment driving long-term CSR impact, and registration is open for that program on our website as well. We are very excited about our upcoming annual conference, which will take place in Denver this year on October 16 through 18. We are actually at capacity now for the conference, although we do have a wait list. So if you are interested in attending the program and haven't had a chance to register, we do encourage you to join the waitlist by emailing Lacey@accp.org, and one of my colleagues can drop that email into the chat. And then finally, our Impact Measurement Summit will be happening on December 5 and 6, and we are excited for registration to open for that program on the week of September 18th. With that, just a few webcast housekeeping facts. We do have Zoom transcript and closed captioning activated for this webcast, so we do encourage you to click on live transcript and click on the caret live transcript so you can view the full transcript of the program. We also have enabled chat and encourage you to engage with the other participants today and with the panelists through the chat feature. And we also will be taking your questions today. So throughout the program, please use the Q&A feature on Zoom. And if you see a question that really resonates with you, please upvote it by clicking on that thumbs up icon. And with that, it is my pleasure to welcome our moderator today and our host, Katherine Wu Brady from Catchafire. Katherine, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Jean. I am so excited to be here. Thank you all for joining us today. While folks continue to dial in, or if you've already been on for a bit, please, if you don't mind, put in your name, your company, and where you're joining us from today, because would love to just to kind of put names to the folks who are on the line. So as Jean shared, we're going to talk about next level skills-based volunteering today. This is something that I'm deeply passionate about, but before we get into it, my name is Kathy Wu Brady. I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Catchafire. And if you're not familiar with us, what we do is focus on strengthening communities by enabling philanthropic and CSR organizations to create high impact programs. And specifically, it's really about resourcing nonprofits in an entirely different way than how we've been thinking about in the past, really all through skills-based volunteering, and thinking about how to do that in new and innovative ways. So we'll talk more about that in a few. I'm the mother of two. I'm a painter, I'm a gardener. I love games, especially word games. So maybe we'll use some interesting words in today's session. And so Catchafire, if you haven't heard of us, as I said, we've helped over 12,000 nonprofits with almost 1.3 million volunteer hours delivered, almost $250 million of value in terms of the work that's been completed, and all at a very high quality. On average, nonprofits and volunteers rate our engagements at 9.5 out of 10. And below, you'll just see some of the companies that we've worked with in order to help them go and bring their skills-based volunteering programs to life. So let's talk about our agenda today. So we just went through a bit of introductions, and thank you so much to everyone who's posting into the chat. Please continue to do so. I know you all want to see each other's names and whereabouts as well. I'm based in Northern New Jersey, by the way, just so you know where I'm located. We're going to talk a little bit about the why of this work. I'm pretty sure all of you are folks who are big champions of this work. And so perhaps we don't need to spend a lot of time there, but I think it's always good to ground us in why are we spending the time here. Then we'll talk a little about the experiences that we've learned over 1 decade of experience around what actually can go and create the highest impact for employees and for your community. And then we'll close out with some strategies for what the next steps can look like. So let's launch in, and we're going to start with actually a poll. So I think I'm going to ask Barbara for her help. Right now, skills-based volunteering at my company has this energy. Are you doing it already? You're thinking about it, and it might be entirely new to you. So take a minute and start to enter in your answers so that we kind of get a feel for, where everyone's head is at on this call today. I can't see what people are answering, but I'm going to take a guess that folks are doing it. And I'll just give it another few more seconds. Jean, you're going to say something?
I was just going to share. So far, 24% said we're doing it, 40% said we are thinking about it, and 36% said new to us.
Amazing. So I guess we can close out the poll for now. Thank you so much for sharing that. And let's look at the results here just to recap what Jean just shared. So some of you are already doing it, but it sounds like a few are still thinking about it. And some really it's brand new to you. So I think that's really exciting. So we'll talk about it today. And we'll dive right in now and hopefully address your questions. And please put in your questions as you have them. I'd love to go and answer along the way. And if I don't get to a question, we'll get to it at the end. So let's go back to the deck for a moment. Right. So, for those of you who already have something in place, right, or in the process of it, if you take a moment, if you want to share, no pressure, what do you want to be true for your workforce in 2024? What are some of the things that you're hoping will happen as a result? And that will be some fodder for us for conversation and questions as we go. So if you're comfortable sharing, please drop it into the chat. What do you want to be true for your workforce in this next year? And then let's just ground ourselves. What is skills-based volunteering? So at Catchafire, we define it very simply. Skills-based volunteering is donating your time and your talent. Super, super simple. And what we mean by that is you're giving some of your time. People are very time constrained these days. And so when you want to donate that is really worth a lot. And then you want to donate your talent. That talent may be the skills that you deploy in your work every day. It may also be something that is actually something you do on the side. Or something that you used to do but no longer do, because so many people have careers that are long and that traverse a lot of ground. And so all this is simply referring to is something that you have as a skill or a talent that you uniquely can go and provide. So then what is next level skills-based volunteering? Well, the frame here is really about companies leading the charge here, because an individual can go and donate their skills on their own. But next level programs are about taking an organization, institution, and pulling the people together into one comprehensive program. And by doing that, you can actually go and drive much more transformative impact in a variety of causes and really engage your employee population in that work. It also means that it is formed through employee input. This is not done kind of just top down or just with a few people in an organization. This is informed by, what do your employees want to accomplish? What did they want to give back? And the other key pillar in this is that this is about also building relationships within your organization. And so, the ability to go and give back together in a moment where so many companies now are remote or hybrid or starting to pull people back in the office, but those transition points may be difficult. This is a wonderful way to rally people together and get them excited. So then, when you think about skills-based volunteering, it really is about bringing social impact and deeper connection ways across your whole organization. One of the things I often talk about is corporate social responsibility can sometimes sit off in a silo. It's another thing that you do in the company. Meanwhile, your employees are doing work day to day, deploying their skills. What about bringing those two things together? It's also, these days, so many folks are talking about, how do we go and bring forth more learning and development opportunities? How do we bring more inclusivity? If you have an ERG group, how do you go and provide programming to them that's active, that is engaging, and that is frankly in line with what they care about? Finding ways to go and do that can be difficult, but skills-based volunteering is one of the best ways to go and create those connections and frankly bring everyone together in line with both the purpose as well as the employee skill set and what the employees are seeking. So let's go into the why of next level skills-based volunteering. Why do you need to go do this? Again, I think these are some things that you all on this call in particular, this is what you do day to day. So perhaps this is going to be second nature to you, but we'll go through it briefly just to ground us, right? So 44% of millennial workers and 49% of Gen Z workers, they care about what their employers are focused on in terms of purpose. And 7 in 10 employers globally said that they're struggling to find workers with the right mix of technical talent and human capabilities. So it's a push and pull. Employees are seeking out that purpose, and then corporations are seeking out ways to go bring in wonderful talent. And 37% of CEOs expect that strengthening their company's stated purpose will actually go and combat what was the Great Resignation and what's now evolving, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about retention, productivity, and frankly, enthusiasm and being part of the company. And even with this more recent backlash against ESG and DEI, these kind of core statistics still have not changed. Employees want this type of incorporation into their work. And again, these are things that you all know, right? But employees want that purpose and that meaning, and it will drive motivation. It will drive greater commitment. It will drive more productivity. Ultimately, companies will be much more competitive and much more successful if they can integrate all these pieces in together. And so when we think about how do employees want to engage, well, there's a multitude of employee giving programs, but something that is often missing is a skills-based opportunity. And the reason why these are so important is that can sometimes feel much more meaningful, much more personal, because it's about your unique skills that are going back into the community. If you can structure the program the right way, then it will actually address the needs of the nonprofits that you're trying to serve. And so this is not a superficial engagement. This is something that's very meaningful, has long-standing impact, and is fundamentally about building connection between people to do real work. Plus, we want to add into this is next level skills-based volunteering. This isn't just skills-based volunteering. It needs to be flexible. It needs to allow for groups of employees. It needs to allow for individuals. It needs to allow different time of day, different time of year, and it needs to be accessible, right? So you want to be able to provide both in-person and you want to be able to provide virtual so that folks can engage whenever it makes sense for them. Last but not least, right? The money often will go and drive what we end up doing. Revenue is often where folks focus first and foremost. Well, 70% of consumers want to know what the brands that they're supporting are doing in relation to social and environmental issues. And 46% pay close attention when they're going and making these purchasing decisions. So all of this paints a picture as to why this is worth the investment. Again, I think I'm speaking, preaching to the crowd that's already out there being the champions and doing this work. So what does it mean to go and create a next level skills-based volunteering program? What are the kind of experiences that matter? So we think of these in two main buckets and then a combined grouping. So first, we think about it through employee volunteering as the primary lens, right? Individual contributions and then team contributions. And we're going to go through each one of these. Then we also think about it through a corporate giving lens. Some of you on the phone may really be involved not only in employee engagement, but also in how are you philanthropically giving back to your communities. Well, interestingly, skills-based volunteering can be something that your organization goes and sponsors for your employees. It can also be something you simply sponsor for your nonprofits to be able to get access to skilled volunteers that strengthen the operations of that organization. We have, for example, some partners like Hasbro, that's where they're primarily focused. They have other programs for their employee engagement, and they seek to go and look to Catchafire to actually support their nonprofits. And the rationale behind that is because most of grant making historically is programmatic, right? There's one area that you're giving to, you really want to impact those beneficiaries, that cause area. Oftentimes those dollars can be more restrictive, and or those dollars don't fully address the capacity needs of the nonprofit. Skills-based volunteers gives you much more breadth and much more ability for the nonprofit to get what they need to make sure their entire organization is supported and more sustainable and frankly more effective to deliver against those programs. And then for the really ambitious organizations, there's an opportunity to bring these together, meaning you're providing corporate giving in terms of supporting the nonprofits with skills-based volunteers beyond your current employee base. And you're activating your employees to be able to go and give back in a skills-based way. So those are the kind of three components. And we're going to dive mostly into that first pillar of employee volunteering. But please, if you have questions, ask them away. I'm happy to take that towards the end of the session. And so let's go and talk a little bit about, and I see one of the Q&A questions. I'm going to answer that as we go through this. So skills-based volunteering through the lens of individuals, there are two different ways to think about this. Many individual professionals don't have a lot of time. I'm a parent of 2 kids. It's a lot. It's a lot to go through the day-to-day motions of the work and then the family obligations and then figure out, okay, how do I get that volunteering in? And so we have something called 1-hour phone calls, which I highly recommend you consider building into your program. What this allows you to do is leverage the skills and the expertise of some of your professionals in more of an advisory capacity in a contained way. I don't know about you as a professional, but I know for me, I have questions all the time, and so do every nonprofit professional and leader. We all have questions. How do you look at, a new CRM? What should I care about when I go and revamp my employee handbook? How do I think about a new marketing strategy? The questions are endless. And so 1-hour phone calls are an excellent way for the employee to go and get back a much more contained period, but still super meaningful, right? And 1 hour is expensive. It's a high value. Then you can go and look on the other end of the scale, which are projects, which could be just 2 more hours, 1 hour more than the 1-hour phone call, all the way up to several weeks. And what does that look like? Well, these are typically involving some form of a deliverable, a social media plan, a website audit. And these are really valuable as well, especially for an employee who wants to go and commit to a longer term relationship, wants to go and give more. Okay. And so giving your employees that type of flexibility to choose, and they can kind of alternate, they can kind of switch it up depending on time of year, can be really powerful so that your employees have choice around what's going to be the most fulfilling to them at that moment in time. When you think about kind of some of the examples of what this could look like, this is a former employee. Mark actually is retired now, but he wasn't retired when our program started with MassMutual, and he was a director of information management. He has delivered over $50,000 of project value across 18 projects and calls. So he's an example of an employee who chose to kind of mix it up. And super valuable feedback from the nonprofits around what he was able to deliver for them. And the employee engagement program for him was really meaningful because he was, in his case, later in his career and starting to think about kind of what are the other ways he wanted to connect with community. And this program enabled him to go and do that and enabled him to go and choose the kinds of ways he wanted to give back over time. Another example is Corrine from American Express. And in her case, she really was looking for 1-hour phone calls. Similar to me, she needed to have a bit more flexibility. And there's a video actually, and we can put that link into, thank you so much, Barbara, for you to access kind of as a follow-up item, just to see kind of how she talked about why the program was helpful to her and why these 1-hour phone calls were a great way to go and give back. And American Express, I just want to take a moment to talk about because they came to us in 2017. They specifically were looking for a way to engage their global employee base. So not all of your organizations may be global. However, even if you're not global, you may have multiple offices or you may have employees in multiple outposts. And when they were looking for a program, they needed to make sure that folks from different regions could have access. And they were really excited to launch with us because employees in the UK, employees in India now could all give back. And we have success stories across the board. And in their case, they chose to give back that kind of dual-sided program. So they have both employee engagement and because they have the Amex Foundation, they also go and grant access to their nonprofits. And it's an important part of their nonprofit support because, again, as I said earlier, nonprofit grant making only gave so much value, and now their nonprofits can have access to not only all of the American Express employees who give back, but also the entire kind of portfolio of tens of thousands of volunteers that come to Catchafire. And so, when we look at kind of long-term volunteering for bigger impact, right? So this is kind of, why is it that the long-term volunteering program also matters in addition to the 1-hour call? Well, there is just such an opportunity for greater inclusivity. And so, for example, we have a board recruitment option. And so for employees that have already volunteered, they've already made a connection. Oftentimes these nonprofits are looking for working boards. And what better way to find a board member that's a fit than working with somebody? And what better way to find a nonprofit that's actually going to meet your desire for purpose as an employee than actually going and volunteering with them first, seeing what it's like to activate on that mission, and then connecting longer term. Professional development is also even more extensive in a longer term volunteering project. Imagine you have somebody who is looking to improve their project management skills or is working on how they go and manage collaboration in a virtual environment. Fantastic to have an opportunity to go and collaborate with a nonprofit on whatever project that they're looking to go and complete. And you can go and develop those communication skills. You can develop that time management capability and other influence skills that are so important in today's workforce. We already talked about flexibility. That continues to matter. And I think high impact is really important here. More and more organizations, more and more employees, we're looking for ways to go and have long-term valuable impact. Sometimes those longer-term projects really deliver against that, right? And so, having the ability to go and give back over a period of time with flexibility can be really meaningful for your employees. One of the questions I think that someone asked in the chat was, how does skills-based volunteering work with programs like ERGs or culture work? And so, I think this is important because in many cases, if you have an ERG that is focused, for example, on the LGBTQ plus community, right? When you go and provide programming for them or funding for them, for so many of these ERGs, they're looking for engagement. And so this is a good segue to the next section, talking a little bit more about group volunteering, because when you think about how do these teams get together, and in the ERG case, they may not be folks that work together regularly. They just may be people who are colleagues across the company. What a fantastic way for them to connect by going and selecting a nonprofit that is in their cause area of focus. Maybe it's multiple nonprofits, and then completing projects together, whether it be a 1-hour phone call or something longer term, so that ERG, those members, can actually form deeper relationships with each other and really feel that they are contributing to their cause area in a greater way. And it's so meaningful to them that their company is the one sponsoring that engagement. And so I hope that answered that question, but I would love to dive in deeper if that would be helpful. And I'll keep answering questions as we go. And so one example of the board piece, because we get this question all the time, this is still in the individual section, is, what does it look like for the journey of a volunteer to become a board member? Well, Yvette is a learning manager from San Diego at American Express, and she had over 20 years of experience in curriculum design and organization. She chose to volunteer multiple times with an organization called Interconnected. They're really exciting in terms of how they help youth in developing resilience and different tools so that they can be more successful. And after she did multiple projects, the Interconnected team was like, wow, this individual, this professional, Yvette, is amazing. We're looking to strengthen our board. And so they asked her to become not only a board member, but their board president. And so if you go to the Interconnected website now, you literally see Yvette there. And that relationship was solely formed because of American Express's skills-based volunteering program. So going back to the team example here, how do you build more collaborative work relationships through volunteering? How do you facilitate those connections, right? And that picture you just saw was a live event, right? And how we pull people together in person. You can also do that virtually, so super important. We call our live events rapid fires, both the virtual and the in-person. And what we have found is that these events can deliver over $100,000 in value. There can be over 250 hours donated across all of the employees that participate. They can easily support 100 or more volunteers and have about 10 nonprofit participants. Everyone walks away feeling like it was a huge win-win. Taking the time, this is very important, taking the time to craft what is it that they're going to tackle in these meetings is very, very important. Making sure with a nonprofit that they have the right challenge, something that will be meaningful. Again, this is not meant to be superficial work. This is meant to be something that will actually help that organization advance their mission. It could be leadership challenges or transitions. It could be succession planning. It could be an event plan. It could be their end of year fundraising plan. It could be as narrow as commenting on some logos and rebranding ideas that they're exploring. And it could be as broad as their marketing strategy for the next year. And so really take some time to craft, what's the right set of challenges, both for your employee base that's engaging in the event and for that nonprofit, so that when they come together, the skills that are being donated, the experience that your employees are walking away with feels really meaningful. And so when we think about team volunteering, there are so many ways to craft this. This can be self-serve, where your employees go and select their own volunteering opportunities. This can be company facilitated, like this photo here and that prior one where it's in person or virtual. And you really want to think strategically also about what community. I mentioned ERGs a moment ago. We've done events in 2020. Many organizations' internship programs were disrupted. We did some events to go and activate the interns for one organization. So these are some of the most inexperienced people within your organization, but they also deserve to be cultivated. They can become really excited and motivated by these types of experiences, and it can, again, develop their skill set. You can also do this. We just recently completed one for GlaxoSmithKline with your executive team. They're just as worthy of taking the time to go and cultivate, and they can become fantastic champions for your CSR strategy. And so taking the time to think about, who are you crafting this for? Why will this event be meaningful to them? How can it be inserted into an existing program? So for example, that executive program we just did was at the end of a strategic planning session, a series of days that were very intense. This was no less intense in terms of, really activating the executive team's thinking. but it also felt different, and it felt like a way to release from all of the work that they were doing that was part of the company, and instead kind of expanding beyond that. And so they chose to do it at the end. You could also do that in the middle or the beginning to kind of loosen the brain, loosen the thinking. We've also been part of learning and development weeks. So imagine you have a sales training week, right? How do you insert moments of engagement and moments of creativity into that? Fantastic. Why not do a team volunteering session for the employees engaging? Because this, again, will challenge them to think a little differently, and it will probably go and tap into a bit more of the heart. And these are all signs or proven ways to go and help people become more engaged, to find new energy, and to really be connected to the company in a deeper way. So let me take a look at the Q&A. What is the frequent starting point for businesses to tackle first as they're building a program, and why? So you're going to hate my answer, but if you want to follow up with another question, please do, or some more context. But the starting point really is dependent upon your organization. It really depends on, who are your employees? What are they looking for? What will actually be meaningful for them? What is your corporate philanthropic program? Are you already giving to nonprofits? What's your relationship to nonprofits? How are you evaluating the effectiveness of your work? It also has to do with, where are your employees located? What skills do they want to bring to the table? And so I think there's a number of different ways to go and tackle. And I frankly have seen, all those companies that you saw the logos at the beginning, they've all tackled it differently. Patagonia, for example, their whole ethos of purpose is built into their entire business model. And so, when you think about them, they came to us, they already had a substantial giving program. Their employees give back every day. So their program was actually hinged upon their corporate foundation. So they did the corporate giving component of sponsoring their nonprofits to get access to Catchafire. And we did a custom integration for them into a platform that was directed to their consumers. If you haven't seen the Patagonia ActionWorks platform, it's worth checking out. And we are one of the kind of marquee elements of that program. And it's because for them, the constituents they wanted to engage was actually their consumers. And so that's a really important way to go and engage. Okay, we're going to come back to the gotchas in a second. Let me just go into a little bit of the what's next. And I will invite you, please do ask more questions as we're going here. So what are some of the elements of best practice? We talked a little bit about these. Employee choice is paramount. This is how you address inclusivity. This is how you address, making sure that no employee is left behind in how you think about programming. Think about tangible impact and outcomes. Really, that last question about where do you start? I think it's really important to figure out what is it that you're trying to tackle. So for many companies right now, one of the key challenges is they've had to go through cost cutting, layoffs. And so employee morale may be down. Folks may be feeling a bit disconnected. And so being able to hone in and say, actually, what I really want to focus on is how employees feel connected to each other and connected back to the company. And then designing your program and the sequencing and the components of it to really address and target that goal is absolutely key. Another example of that tangible impact is focusing on what are the social outcomes that your organization wants to drive, your company wants to drive. So Albertsons, the major grocery organization, grocery chain, they have an entire program that is about tackling hunger, nourishing neighbors. And that is where their president is focused. And that is where their program kind of really hinges. And it's what they've been doing for a long time, but their skills-based volunteering program should slot right into that and really continue to support an existing strategy. And so I think that's also very important when you think about tangible impact and outcomes. How do you make this fit into your existing strategy so that this is not another one-off activity, but something that feels like it's cohesive? Supporting learning and development, we talked about that too. These days, budgets are being cut. There may not be room for a lot more learning and development. How do you make existing programs or even new programs like a skills-based volunteering program check off more boxes, right? And so skills-based volunteering may be one of the primary ways you want to go and do this. And you can think about, in the rollout process, how do you go and make this part of the conversation between managers and their employees? How do you go and ensure that when you host each of the opportunities to give back, that's being tracked? What skills were given? What skills were needed to be able to complete that work? And so really integrating that into your overall design is important. And then last but certainly not least, just designing this in an inclusive way with a lot of flexibility. Workforces are more diverse than ever. And so being able to go and have this be part of, how do you go and bring all employees from all backgrounds, all situations into the fold, and helping them see that they can all participate. And everything from the new employee who is early in their career to maybe the employee who's been there for a long time and maybe is ready for the next stage of their career and potentially retirement. They can all participate, and they should be able to if you've got the right kind of program design. So I'm going to go into questions in just a moment, but here's a checklist of some of the things that, you'll want to go and consider when you're developing your your next level skills-based volunteering program. I said it at the outset, really thinking about, who are your employees and what are they looking for? So, what kind of experience is intuitive and rewarding for them? Do they have power of choice? Who are the communities that you're hoping to go and support? And how are you going to go strengthen them? How does this fit into the overall corporate mission and the corporate philanthropic strategy? Do you have internal and external visibility needed for success? So, what are the efforts and results that are easily measurable? Is it the number of hours given? Is it the dollar value of the work that's being delivered? Is it the number of employees who are engaging? Is it the number of nonprofits that you're actually being able to impact, right? So much of this work, I think, really depends on the culture of your organization. We have worked with organizations where communicating out about their impact is actually not the priority. And so they're really focused on internal activations. We've also worked with companies where external communication was like super critical. And so if you couldn't measure, if you couldn't story tell, if you didn't get the photo, and that impact report wasn't able to be saturated with these stories, it just wasn't as successful. So keeping those elements in mind as you're developing the program are key, so that you have somebody taking photos at the event, so that you can gather testimonials along the way. For example, on Catchafire's platform, all of our engagements have testimonials in terms of a process to capture built right in. At the end of every project, we ask both sides, how did it go? Tell us a little bit about so-and-so and who you worked with. And that gets posted directly to the site. And all of our CSR customers can just take that right from the platform as it's coming in. And so thinking about kind of those kind of elements of what matters to you and your organization are so key. And then when you start to explore solutions, where do you go? Well, there's just so many different places to look. We have the benefit of the internet and a lot of published insights. We have over a decade of experience. Please call us. We're happy to go and help you. Also, really think about scalable solutions that can grow and evolve with your organization. And look for a win-win-win across all your stakeholders. So, don't just focus on just the employees. Don't just focus on the nonprofits. Don't just focus on, your senior executives. Really think about how do you go and work across all of them to make sure that you're getting to the right answer for your organization. So let's take this other question here that someone asked around, what are some of the gotchas that companies often overlook when considering an employee volunteer program? Well, I think that the top two gotchas, and there's probably several more, are one, generating sufficient buy-in. Actually, I think I have 4 to give you. I'm feeling like we've got a lot of learnings here. So would love to go and give that to you here now. And so please drop in more questions. I see them coming in. So I'd say the first one is buy-in. And so that's one of the reasons why we said at the very beginning, are you listening to your employees? Are you listening to your staff to figure out what people care about? If you don't have sufficient buy-in, it's definitely one of those things, if you build it, they will not come. You really need to go and make sure you have surveyed, that you've conversed, that you've talked to, the different leaders across your organization, so that you have an understanding of what they need and they have an understanding of what's possible, and that they feel like they're co-creating with you. Another gotcha is not spending enough time with your corporate communications team or whomever it is that helps you with messaging. And the reason why this matters so much is, again, if nobody knows about it, it's like the tree falling in the forest. Folks will not engage. And in a moment where attention is so much, the attention economy is such a challenging place to play, folks have different tools, email, Slack, so many ways that they're being asked to go and try something new and adopt a new tool. You want to make it easy for everyone. And so taking the time to go and understand what are the different channels of communication, which ones are effective for different types of employees, different departments. If you're a very large global organization, chances are different regions communicate differently. And so taking a moment to understand each one of those and thinking about how do you go and make sure you're hitting upon the right ones and sequencing it out. You don't have to go and try to engage everyone at the same time, but you do need to think about how you're going to go and strategically engage the organization over time. I'd say another gotcha is taking the time to understand, what does impact mean for your organization? What will actually motivate people the most? Kind of what I talked about before. It's like, will people get really motivated when they hear about the cause areas that have been addressed, or seeing one of their colleagues in like a video, the video from Corrine, for example, from American Express? Like, what are the ways in which people will feel like this is compelling, this is worth the time? And then the last one I'll highlight is management buy-in. And I do mean executives, but I also mean all the way down the line. And you may have already experienced this with your other CSR programs. If something that you're deploying isn't something that's actually, something that people do day to day on a regular basis, in many ways, people look to their managers to guide them on how to spend their time. We're in a moment where productivity and outcomes are super important. And so if your manager or the employee's manager is not suggesting that this is something that's worth spending time on, they probably won't spend time on it. And so taking the time to understand, like, who do you need to influence to go and see if this is actually something of value to them, right? We're not launching programs here to go and check the box. We're launching programs here to actually have impact. And so making sure folks understand what can be the value of a skills-based volunteering program, and understanding how through your management chain can you actually drive that kind of understanding through and get successes. What kind of ROI does an average program achieve? Thinking about pitching this to key executives. So that depends. I don't think I can kind of answer that in a kind of a straight way, because every program is so different. It really depends on what you deploy and why you're deploying it. What I will say is that the folks who work with us, they work with us for the long term. So this is not a one-year program, and I don't advise you to think about it as a 3-year program. I think it's a long-term investment that is designed to go and support, again, your corporate philanthropic strategy and your employee engagement and employee learning and development and employee inclusivity strategy. And so I will say this, for some of the most successful programs, they are looking at ROI on a number of different levels. So they're looking at dollars of value that have been actually donated, and then looking at against like the cost of the program, because those dollars could have been, gone directly to the nonprofit, or they could be donated through your employees. And if that works out in terms of the math, it can be a really positive argument. But folks also look at things like the ratings on the successes of these different events and these different engagements. So those are just some of the examples of how folks evaluate and happy to talk more, if you want to go and brainstorm together. Christina, thank you for your question. How can we better tie this platform with current employee engagement tools? So I think it's really important to be able to think about kind of, how do you engage your employees currently? What tools are they currently using? It's a process to go think about, like, where are the entry points and what is most effective for events. Sometimes those aren't done on the platform at all. They're done through email and they're done through calendaring. For the engagement of employees actually kind of on the site itself, we do recommend folks come into Catchafire's platform and then have that be marketed across your different employee communication platforms. If you have like an employee hub of sorts, and other kind of communication platforms across your organization. And again, happy to talk more. Integration points are something that we do hear a lot about, and something would love to go dive into further with you, Christina. And then another question that you had, Christina, was how do you register as a group? So this is a really interesting one and an easy one for me to answer, because at least from our standpoint, two different ways to register for volunteering through Catchafire kind of solutions. One is on the platform, and so registering as a group, all you need is to have a team lead. One person who's the designated person. Our research has shown having one person responsible makes it so much more successful versus kind of having multiple people in there. And they can actually go into the platform and set up the team for their volunteering experience. And then for these events, whether they're virtual or in person, those are often very curated. So the employees that are already being invited are already pre-selected. There are instances, so we just ran 2 events for KPMG, one in New York, one virtually, but this is part of their community impact day. And so it was open-ended. Anyone could attend, anybody could sign up. And so in those cases, we really recommend you have an intake process to go and get people to say, hey, listen, I'm interested. And then if you can get enough attributes about the employees who are signing up, we can help, or you can design this so that you can think about, who do you want to engage in a group and why? Maybe you want people with similar skill sets together. Maybe you want people with different skill sets mixing together so that you can actually get more cross-functional engagement. Jean, I see you coming off of mute.
I popped in because we are just about at time, so wanted to see if there were any last questions.
Amazing. Thank you, Jean. And
if not, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
No, I was going to thank you. I was going to thank you for your time today, for Catchafire's support of this program, your wisdom. Volunteering, the changing landscape of volunteering is top of mind for all of our members. And so I think you've given our audience some really good tips and suggestions of things to think about. So I thank you for that. I also want to thank all the participants for joining us today. We're so pleased that you were able to take advantage of this session. I would like to ask my colleague to share the QR code for the survey. So your feedback is very important to us. So please fill out this very, very short survey. Take out your phones and use that QR code. We've also dropped the link into the chat. It's 4 questions. It'll take you a minute. So please give us your feedback, because it helps us make sure that we are producing effective and important programs for you in the future. So with that, thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at a future ACCP event.
Yeah, thank you.